and welcome to The Panel, our weekly NBL SuperCoach show where we'll take you through everything that's happened across the course of the weekend, look forward to next weekend, give you a little bit of tips and insight in how you can structure your SuperCoach team for maximum success this season. My name's Joel Peterson. Great to be joined by two experts in the field. James Clements, our resident SuperCoach wizard. Good to see you, James.
I believe I'm only the SuperCoach wizard because of the beard, JP. Like, this might be a bit of a slur, I'm just saying, but at the same time, I'm here for it. I'm all things SuperCoach all the time, and I can't wait for this NBL season to start. I mean, I don't know about you, Boydie, but I'll tell you what, my tinkering is just hitting like crazy levels at this point. So.
Definitely have made a lot of changes.
Boydie, from the Basketball Blokes, we're right on the edge. It's getting toward that anti-time of you're not sure whether you're set or you just forget. How you're placed at the moment?
Team is getting changed quite regularly, but thanks for the opportunity to come and chat more SuperCoach NBL, because that's what we like to do all the time.
It is a really exciting time, of course. supercoach.nbl.com.au. You can pick your team, you can get involved. It is such a great way to enjoy the season, and we're hearing rumblings of a major prize this year for the overall winner as well, which is very exciting. So there's plenty of reasons to get involved.
I'm just hoping it's like a house visit from Damon Lowry. Like, is that cool? Like, let's just make that happen. You just hang out and just yell at me a bunch.
Damon, if you're going to do a house visit, please put a shirt on, for the love of God. We just want you fully clothed for that particular house visit. Let's get into the NBL Blitz, because that's where our attention's been over the last little while on the Gold Coast. Of course, 7 days of hoops up there. It was a magnificent event. And it was really our first chance to see how these teams were preparing ahead of NBL 25. Who caught your eye out of the Blitz, Boydie?
One that comes to mind, I guess, is Cam Oliver. So the first surprise was coming off the bench. So obviously, maybe is that a role for him when we go into the season? Who knows? A bit up in the air, I think. But I think he averaged 38 SuperCoach points over his 3 games, coming off the bench. So, yeah, I think he's looking the goods. There's a couple other guys. Jack White looked really good as well from Melbourne United. Obviously, big expectations coming back from his NBA and G League tough. But, yeah, apart from that, a couple of guys we looked at with points per minute style. All right, this is the Blitz. They're only warming up. They're not playing the big minutes, but Tyrell Harrison was one that had quite a good score, points per minute wise, and also Humphreys, which is a bit of a surprise there. Obviously a red flag there with Harrell coming into the roster as an injury replacement, but there's a couple of guys for you. What do you reckon?
I think this is the weirdest part about this here, Boydie. Like, the Blitz, it's so hard to read too much into it. It's like, we're just playing heaps of the bench. Check this out. Look at Ben Henschel. He's awesome. And you're like, yes, Ben Henschel, yeah, we're doing it.
Yep.
And then you go, hey, John, really, you're going to play him in the regular season? He's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I've got Bryce Cotton, right?
Yeah.
I'll just play him 40 minutes. It's going to be sick.
Well,
so I think you look at Cam Oliver and you look at his role and you go, all right, what are the Kings going to be doing? He was, 17 and 10 last time we saw him a couple of years ago in the NBL. That's awesome. Like, that's exactly what you want from SuperCoach scoring as well. That's a double-double. If you can average me a double-double, you're laughing. You're in my team. Outside of that, though, like, I was there for 2 games. So I saw 4 teams in a very, very short succession. And like the things that stood out to me were like the obvious bench players that the coaches trusted. And you're like, he likes him. Let's do this. And like you look at the Phoenix, they're like, with Hurt and stuff like this. And you're like, ooh, I don't mind this. I'm looking at this one. He's like owned by 4% of coaches. I'm just saying there's a bit of a POD right there. But outside of this, looking at someone like the Phoenix and a team like that where there's so much change, I think that's where the value of the Blitz lies. Where you're like, all right, so they're just going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And some stuff did, some stuff didn't. Looking at Ben Ayres, looking at Foxwell, you're like, ooh, I like how these roles are changing. I like what we're sort of seeing. And then outside of that, you've got Sobey in his new role. You've got Derek Walton Jr. in his new role. And you're like, how does this gel? And you're like, ooh, well, we've got a couple of games to find out. So that was, I think, where the value really lied in that sort of stuff, rather than specifically just straight up stats, because, I mean, playing time is so much more skewed at that sort of stuff. But, I mean, they're probably the dudes, like Foxwell specifically, is like one of the guys who sort of stood out to me, just like in that role. It feels like he almost had the backup point guard sort of spot locked away. And you're like, it's also weird because you're like, I think I'm taller than you. This is weird. What's going on? Can I play point guard? How many SuperCoach points do I get? Let's go! But outside of that, I think that's where I landed, where I sort of took everything with a grain of salt, but it's the unknowable knowables that you sort of go, all right, Keanu Pinder, still good. Bryce Cotton, still good. Cam Oliver can still play basketball. Let's go. Jack White, awesome. He's locked into so many teams already that it's ridiculous, but it makes sense when you look at him in that role at United. He's basically their go-to guy almost outside of Gourdie. And here we are. So I think I've got a far better idea about how I want my team to look than I did going into it, if that makes sense.
There's still some question marks, obviously, with the Blitz form, because it's only based on, a couple of games here. As you say, there's going to be minutes for everyone. They throw minutes at the bench. So, but it's all we've got. So you've kind of got to use and abuse it and, try and work out those guys, is it Henschel's year? I know last year we coined the term getting Henscheled because even my two other basketball blokes, Benny and Banksy, got on board the Henschel train and then it kind of went off the track pretty quickly.
It left me at the station as well,
Yeah.
the Ben Henschel train, very publicly. So.
But yeah, there's plenty of guys that are going to get minutes there. Definitely. Foxwell was an interesting one because he seems to have taken Ben Ayres minutes from last year. Obviously with Glover coming in too, who looks just nice as well in that six-man position, I think too.
I also looked at for the Blitz, you're like, all right, everyone's letting it fly, but the three-point attempts, and we know that in SuperCoach scoring, like, three-point attempts, you're not punished for missing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just hit some, and we're laughing. So you look at someone like Sobey, who last year was launching, didn't hit too many, that's the problem, but is probably going to have the green light there, you reckon, with the Phoenix. And then outside of that, Bubbles, I think, took 12 in his one game. And you're like, oh, I think Chris Goulding's going to shoot some threes this year. Mm-hmm. So outside of that, the other names like Jonah Antonio was averaging over 7 threes attempted in the Blitz. And I'm like, I'll tuck that away behind the older year and keep that in the grey matter for when I actually want to bring him in maybe. But it's just stuff like that where you're like, are they trends or are they just sort of little fun points of interest for a Blitz where they're just rolling them out there and see what happens?
And then you've got the sort of the younger players, so your Alex Tui's, your Lockie Olbrichs, where it's the first time we get to look at what might they be this season off a year of development. Tui and Olbrich are two really interesting cases. Tui's role changed at the back end of last year. Lockie Olbrich sort of struggled to cement his spot. He's coming off a massive pre-season though. Boydie, how do you see those two as two guys who people had a lot of eyes on, scouts and SuperCoach owners included? How do you see those two fitting into things?
I had some question marks over Tui's role there in that because of last year as well. But I think he's really I think he's going up the priority list a little bit with Gorgian there now. So I think he's destined for a pretty big season by the looks of it, and he's obviously had form in the Blitz too. But that is a stacked lineup at Sydney, so who's getting all the minutes? Is it going to change every night? There's basically 10 guys that can play 25 minutes, 30 minutes a game on that roster. So I don't know. Whereas Lockie O, he's kind of got that more defined role. I think they're just going to use the three bigs there with Froling and Days. So I think he's very popular. Obviously, his ownership's right up there. I think he's in the top 3 owned players too. So I think just about everyone's got him. And hopefully he carries form over. Last year, it didn't quite work out. He kind of had that Blitz kind of hype as well. And it didn't carry over to the season proper again. So we're hoping this time it's a bit different.
I was so hyped for I think Olbrich's shooting threes and I'm jumping out of my seat going, yes, do that more. Come on, Lockie, let's go. And off we went. It was this is great. I just want to see it actually continue into the season though.
We know he can share the ball. He'll get assists. He'll get plenty of rebounds. So he's going to be an exciting player to watch this season. So that's hot and not. What about what you got? The part of the season where we're locking in our teams. This is where it gets really serious. We assess who's got what, who likes certain things about the way certain players are going. James, who have you got at this stage?
I'm more concerned with what you got. You wanted to take my shirt off there, JP. I mean, I'm well, no one wants to see this. But my team, look, I think I've approached this, and as I said at the start, I've gone back and forth a million times on this, and there's probably 2 key aspects to my team and who I will continue to sort of send in and out, right? And I think a lot of this comes down to what we saw in the Blitz with Derek Walton Jr. He's in one of my guard spots. But where we sit at the moment, I've got Cam Oliver because I just can't ignore how much of a role he'll have with Sydney. As I mentioned, 17 and 10 last time we saw him. Jack White as well in the other forward spot. I think he is a contributor across all the statistical categories that you need. Maybe we'll see some threes. I was there. He's just had a full training camp with the Boomers. I was there before they went to France as well, and had a quick chat. He was just psyched, stoked, ready to fire up, and I'm like, Delhi loves him, Bubbles loves him. We're in. I'm all in.
A few lobs from Delhi are going to come in handy, I think.
Well, yeah, he can jump a little bit, Jack White, so it should be all right. But that's it. It's all the defensive stats really help your scores in SuperCoach, right? So when we break it down, blocks and steals are 3 points each, right? So that's an extra couple of points here and there. I think Jack White defensively is just a monster this year. So I think he was probably my first pick. Cam Oliver probably second. Sam Froling as my centre is the... I've gone back and forth a bit on this. I just think he's probably old reliable, the most sort of consistent performer that I can look at in that centre spot. I did toss around the idea of Marcus Lee once he signed with United. I'm like, let's go. That centre spot in United is going to be awesome. But I'm like,
You've cooled on him now, Lowe is sort of starting in the Blitz,
Exactly.
getting lots of minutes,
So
doing
you
all right.
You see that sort of like timeshare, and you're like, I don't want any bar of that. Sam Frolling's going to dominate. And even, especially with, which we'll get to in a bit, like in terms of schedules and stuff, Illawarra is like flying. So I love Sam Frolling there. My guards, Derek Walton Jr. and Kendrick Davis. So Davis is like the sort of question mark. We all know this.
Yep.
I kind of love him though. Like, Supercoach sometimes is just like, caution to the wind, I love him. Just have a crack, son. Just put up like 20 points a game. No one will care. Like, if you're just shooting it and missing a bunch, you'll warm into it. That's still just like that one spot though that I might go back and forth as we get further into this preseason or into the actual season. And Derek Walton Jr., I just love his role. Like, I think a lot of people have got United guards. I'm just not wildly convinced on, especially for week one, Daly and for Goulding. I'm just like a little bit cautious. Same with Bryce Cotton. So I've saved a little bit of cash there with my Supercoach budget. So Derek Walton at what, 356? I feel like his role, he's going to get plenty of the ball. That's a lot of assists, a lot of rebounds, a lot of threes. Off we go with Derek. And then the bench is Lockie O. Love Albrecht. Come on, what are we doing here? Ben Henschel, obviously. Rocco as the backup centre. That's still just like a bit of a... We'll see how we go with like the actual week one, what's going to happen with Rocco. Then Angus Glover and Will Hickey are my two backup guards. I feel like having been at one of the Blitz games with the Phoenix, watching the Red Rocket Angus Glover out there, just like out there representing us Gingers, like just carving them up. Absolute, like he's just on my Mount Rushmore of Gingers at this point. So let's go Angus Glover. I think he is a steadying presence off that Phoenix bench with a lot of movement, right, in that team. So let's go for Angus Glover. And then Will Hickey. I think he is another one that I saw. I'm basically just picking dudes I saw. Like it's like I saw him come off the bench. He looked awesome. I'm like, he's going to have a role. Justin Tatum's going to like trust him, and away we go. So I'm probably only just going to toss around the odd Kendrick Davis spot, go back and forth on that. He is playing for Adelaide, so it's like the one thing where their schedule's like that little bit dicier. But I've loaded up on Sydney, Illawarra, United, Phoenix, like everybody else.
Well, that's obviously schedule based, which is kind of how you play the game. But you've got to remember that we've got rounds 3 and 4 as well, and you're only getting 2 trades a week to use those trades. So it's pretty important that you look ahead of just round 2. But I don't mind it. Frolling's an interesting one. I reckon that's a big point of difference. He's fairly highly priced, I guess, whereas you can get those new imports, forward centres in there that you could slot in. But I mean, Oliver you've already got, so moves across. But yeah, I don't mind. I think our bench is fairly similar at the moment. I think I've got Tui sliding in there a little bit at the moment as well. There's a little bit playing around. I don't know how you can deny Cotton. He's got Sam Phoenix first up, who he absolutely tears to shreds every time. So you've got one Bryce is nice, but twice is better because you've got a captain choice with him. So the people of Perth won't be happy with you.
Well, I've got a lot of problems with the people of Perth anyway. Like they've got a problem with me. That's fine. No, I'm off the Cotton train. At the start of the season, like I think there is at least a price dip coming for Bryce, and like this is the way we play Supercoach, right? So Supercoach is all about value, and I think what you'll sort of find is Bryce, if he has, especially with his schedule and that Perth schedule, I think he'll probably have a pretty big game one. I think there's probably a little bit of scope where he dips in price a little bit, and I can snag him a little bit later on when I like the Perth schedule a little bit more as well. That's probably why I've stuck away from Pinder and Cotton initially. So, yeah,
he's got Bryce though for that first round. It's only everyone's on a single, so there's no price changes.
Yep.
You got a free hit.
Yeah, it's a free crack at your captain.
So I'm not too worried about sliding Bryce in there. Plus, he's the most expensive player in the game. So into round 2, you can trade him out for anyone. So if someone gets hot like a Davis, who's been in and out of my side as well, I'll be honest with you. But obviously Adelaide starts with the 2 singles in rounds 1 and 2 as well, so we're not going to get any value appreciation with him until round 3. So that's a big key for me. But as I said, he has been in and out of my side as well. I think the interesting one, other than your team, I think I've got Darius Days from the Hawks. Only played the 2 games because he wasn't given clearance for the first Blitz game, but came in, I think he averaged just under 30 Supercoach points. And that was in low minutes as well, only around about 20 minutes. I can't see him playing 20 minutes a game. It's going to be 25 plus. So he's a different one for me. And I've got Illy on the bench at the moment as well. I hear what you're saying about those Melbourne guards. It's kind of, there's 4 of them there that kind of all share those 1, 2, 3 position minutes. It's a bit scary, but his preseason form's looking good. I think he's going to be the first one he's going to start. So he might just be there purely as a schedule base because they obviously start with single, double, double. They're the only team that do that. So you can kind of just slide him in there or any of the other Melbourne guys and just wait.
Yeah, I'm going to look like an idiot when he's averaging like 8 steals a game after 3 games. I'm like, oh, come on, man, what have I
That
done?
might be the case as well, but it depends. Like, I'm not sure he's that much of a value play, which is obviously important. You want some value appreciation from your team as well, especially early. You want guys that are going to go up in price. That big price jump is generally that first price jump in the SuperCoach game. So bear that in mind. The teams that are going to have the double in round 2, because if the players play their 3 games in the 2 rounds, they're going to have some price changes.
Yeah, that's the price changes there. I think like Days is like the fascinating one for me. Like he just talk about like, you know, Davis Days is like these big question marks. Like Days is probably the one where I'm like, all right, if Coach Tatum is just like on board from day one, which he probably is, like he might be the like first person I trade in next week. I just want to see it one time, I reckon.
Well, you get that option, so that's good.
He looks legit. Just from what I saw at the Blitz, he looks legit, and he is a big unit. So those rebounds are going to be no problem for Darius Days. He is in my team, and now I must say I'm keeping the seat warm here, and I am no expert when it comes to SuperCoach. So I would say I'm probably a bottom 3rd finisher in most years, but I'm going to have a crack. I'm going to try and be disciplined this year and really get into it. So Darius Days is in my team. I really like what he brought. The other one that I sort of thought maybe is a little bit of a player of difference was Dylan Windler, the Perth Wildcats. So big guard, comes in with a really big rebounding reputation. He will gobble up boards for a team that sorely needed that last year. He was mid-priced, and I think he might be the player that a lot of people are just sleeping on in terms of he might be their second best import. He might end up being more impactful than Christian Doolittle in terms of a stats perspective. So he was one that was really intriguing to me. And I must say, I'm fully on board the Ben Henschel train again. I'm at the station. I've got my bags packed. I'm calling John really saying, John, you know, I've got my ticket. Can we organise this to keep happening? So I'm looking forward to a stopping all stations Ben Henschel experience this season. And that train is just going to be serving fine. I'm going to be in first class on the Ben Henschel train. So if it derails, I'll be the first to know about it.
You need like one of those little conductor hats. You need like one of those fisheye cams like that Francois kid. Like you're just there, just like frothing. I love it.
Yeah, I'm full Gunzel. Full Gunzel.
Everyone got excited by that 40 SuperCoach point game, obviously, in the Blitz. Had plenty of minutes that game as well, but I think he's probably the first guard off the bench. So I don't mind it. I don't mind the Henschel pick. I mean, we're all kind of getting sucked in here a little bit. You know, hopefully it pans out for us all, but I don't know. I don't mind Windler. There's a bit of a red flag there. I think JR said that they're trying to ramp up his minutes, might only start with 10 to 15. So bearing in mind, they've only got the 2 singles to start off the year. So getting him early might actually be okay because he might be starting to warm up into those minutes straight away. But I like him. He's very active on the boards. I saw him almost take a specky, if we're talking AFL terms, but took a specky trying to get a rebound in one of the Blitz games as well. So obviously is a man to get in there.
Windler's a great POD because like you look at SuperCoach scoring and like the top teams after a few rounds, there's always like some surprises.
Yep.
Right? And like his SuperCoach scoring profile sort of builds out as like rebounds, threes, just like junk buckets as well. Like that's the sort of perfect like, oh, where did he come from sort of SuperCoach scorer? My initial worry was like the price of his actual starting price. I feel like he could come down just that little bit, and then I'm probably on the Windler train as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just how he fits into that Perth rotation in the early part of the season. That is for sure. Of course, every game, the NBL app, SuperCoach scores are there throughout the course of the season, so you can jump on there, you get all your news, all your video content, you can watch this show, and then of course you can get SuperCoach scores live throughout every game throughout the course of the season. So the NBL app, as well as of course the SuperCoach website, they are the go-to destinations throughout the course of the season. What about a shout out to? So our most popular players heading into round 1, we will have touched on a few of them. Lockie Olbrich is certainly in that mix, the big Allura Hawks man. What about the other players who are kind of the most used, the most selected so far, James?
I think the biggest question mark probably is like the types of Rocco, right? So Rocco Zukarski, the big man for the Bullets, like I think we're putting a lot of sort of time and effort and going, well, they're going to try to get him drafted. He's going to get a lot more playing time this year. He, 7 minutes a game last year. Still averaged a block and almost 4 points anyway. And you're like, let's go. The only problem I have is like Tyrell Harrison's crushing it. He looks awesome. And you're in this sort of rock and hard play spot where you're like, oh, well, we want to develop Rocco, but we also want to win games. And like, how much can we afford to play him as he develops? But this is the best part about SuperCoach. You can he's rock bottom price anyway. You get a free look week 1. You don't have to really stress on his price moving down too much. He's not going to hurt you too badly. And if by the second half of the season, once that Brisbane schedule really comes to the fore, which is absolutely chaotic in the back half, where it's just like doubles week after week after week after week, and you like lock in your Brisbane Bullets players from there on. But at the moment, it's kind of like, that's the biggest question mark, but he's so cheap, it's probably not going to hurt you, Boydie.
Yeah, I think so too. His points per minute is off the charts. We saw last year. I think he averaged 1.2 or something like that. So if he bumps
it's not
up,
hard when you're taller
that's
than
right.
the actual thing, right?
That's right.
I'll just dunk it. Yeah,
gets about a block a minute, so it pans out right in SuperCoach. And I think no Baines there now. He's going to get more minutes automatically. I don't think Tyrell plays 40 minutes a game. But you're right. There's a bit of a red flag there that Tyrell's in great form. He's looking the goods. He's fit, etc., etc. 7 minutes from Rocco last year. I said it when I saw him live. I was up in Queensland earlier in the year. I said on our podcast, I said Rocco's my first pick next year, having seen him live, and that came to fruition. I did pick him first this year when I started building a team. But now I've kind of cooled on him a little bit with Tyrell's form. But I think you're right. He's so cheap. He's going to get 10, 15 minutes. I think he's going to get those points, which should see his price sort of double. And you're going to probably want him for that back-ended schedule from Brisbane as well.
It's a perfect segue into making moves. So you mentioned that you're going to be changing your team, Boydie. What are you looking for? What are the kind of things you're thinking about over the next 24 hours before that rolling lockout starts? Thursday for that first game. What are you thinking about in terms of team selection?
Geez, I'm going backwards and forwards the whole time. There's about 15, 20 players that I want in my side, and you can only get to pick 10. So I'm looking at the Blitz stats. I'm looking at minutes. I'm keeping my eye on all the social media to see if there's any updates. I know Scott Roth came out and said that the Tasmanian roster's in trouble or something. Apparently only Shawnee Max injured at present is what we know, but so there's some question marks there. Obviously they've got the first game tomorrow night. Don't know if I'll have any JJ's players in there, although Will Magnay is looking like he's in some form.
Yeah,
and we know
Magnay
he can definitely SuperCoach.
He's going to block the hell out of everything. It's going to be awesome. I think, but yeah, the other jack jumpers, it's just like so many question marks about that roster, especially early on. Like I feel like they learned last year that they can sort of take it that little bit easier and sort of like warm into the season, right?
I don't know. I think they're going to lean on Doyle. They're going to lean on Crawford more now that McVeigh's not there. There's some opportunity there to have some JJs in your SuperCoach side. So, what happens with that? And then, making sure that I'm sitting under the salary cap because you want to keep some money in hand for that all-important first round or second round. Going into the second round, you want to make sure you got some cash there if you make some mistakes. If we get Henschelled again, hopefully not. If something doesn't quite pan out, you've got some chance there to go.
I think the biggest one for me is like Lou Pepe on Sydney, right? So the Kings are just like, talk about a team of question marks. Like that's what they are, right? They're so, as you hit on, right?
Yep.
10 dudes who can play 25 minutes a game. He's cheap as chips. He's like probably, in terms of like most owned, what are we looking at moving? He might be the one that just stands out week one where I'm like, I missed the trick there. He's one of my first trades in. Days as well as one of those ones. But like talking about Hawks, I think having seen them in person, I'm like, look out. There are some really interesting names on that team where if Tatum is sort of like looking to like build on what he had last year, obviously, they've got so much, like Tyler Harvey could just absolutely tear this up. And I think my last guard spot is either Davis or he. And I'm like, that's going to be the one that I'm just going to like absolutely just tear my hair out, what remains of it. Just like maybe the beard goes first before the hair. I don't know. Like, but it's just going to drive me insane because like I know that whichever way I land, I'll probably pick the wrong one. Like it's classic. It's the trolley thing, but for SuperCoach. It was like I've got to go this way. It's definitely going to work, and then you just run over a bunch of people.
I reckon if you have him in your side, mate, I think you've got 15 Hawks players in your side, so you might be maybe slightly too Hawk centric.
Just call me James Tatum at this point. Like it's chaos, and like the other ones as well. Like the old faithful Nathan Sobey. Like you saw, like this is what this first week is, where you go, oh the role.
Yep.
The role. Derek Walton, Sobey, that backcourt for the Phoenix. Can't wait to see what happens. And I think I'm just worried about like the Sobey sort of consistency throughout the season. I think that's why I've sort of gone with Derek Walton as well. So we'll sort of see what happens there. And outside of that, like there's, as I said, Marcus Lee, Trey Cal. Like these are the guys that I'm just really focusing on week 1 and 2, just to sort of lock in that price rise. Who do I want to get around? It's probably those dudes. And Adelaide, like, there's just so many question marks about that. Montrezl Harrell. We haven't even mentioned Montrezl Harrell yet. Like, former 6th man of the year in the NBA, does his ACL, chooses to come to the NBL, and Adelaide, it seems like this is the perfect spot for him. He could put up massive numbers, but we don't know what his role is going to be. So
we don't know if he's even going to play,
exactly.
So you might not know until the last minute. But we've seen guys come in straight, off the plane and dominate and put up huge Supercoach scores in the past. So is he going to come and do that? Even arguably Days did that when he came into the Blitz. He walked in straight away and almost doubled. I think he was a rebound short. So guys can do it. Is he going to do it? I'm not too sure.
If Harold has as many stats as he had gold chains when he got off that plane in Adelaide, then I reckon Montrez is in for it.
The buzzer was definitely going off when he was going through those the security.
Yeah, he had them in the carry-on and then put them back on.
He was wearing the Supercoach salary cap around his neck. Like, it's chaos. But
Why not?
It's like also dudes like DJ, Chris Gould, like old favourites as well. Like, these are the ones you got to keep your eye on this week. That you're like, oh, I've missed a trick. What am I doing? Like, this is the classic Supercoach Galaxy brain, where I'm like, you overthink something, and you're like, I've Galaxy brain that. Of course I have, because that's what I do. So I think Bubbles is like the obvious one where you go, if he is just the absolute focal point of that United offense, which he probably will be, I just trust Jack White's ability to get all the other ancillary stats, where it's not going to have the pitfalls, the roller coaster ride of Goulding. So I'm probably going to just stick fat with Jack.
White doesn't need to be that key scorer there. He's going to score, but he doesn't have to be the man on the offensive end. I think he's just going to pick up those little scores. I'm not too worried about that. There's a couple of guys up north we haven't probably talked about. The new imports up at Cairns. They've got 3 to choose from. Bradshaw could look quite good in the Blitz as well. And also Groves. Doesn't really look like much of a basketball player. He's a big, scrawny looking guy, but he's a big dude. But he's looked the goods too. Nice touch around the basket, which is what you want from those bigs if they're getting putbacks, they're getting rebounds and points at the same time.
And we know that Adam Ford plays that up-tempo style, so there's plenty of opportunities in that Adam Ford team. Boydie, James, great stuff. It is all part of the fun. Of course, supercoach.nbl.com.au is where you need to go to get involved this season. So many challenges ahead, so many questions ahead. It's an exciting time of the year. Thanks both for your time, and most importantly, good luck.
Cheers. I'm definitely going to need it. Don't worry about that. Supercoach Wizard, it's all the beard, but God, I'm just going to be digging into this. Over under on the amount of trades you're going to have this week, like Boydie, just like the amount of changes you're going to make.
Overs, completely overs.
I'm saying like 250. Like, I'm just going to keep changing. Like, it's just non-stop.
That's just tomorrow for me.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of time invested between now and then. Thanks for your company as well. Look forward to your company throughout the course of the weekend, watching all the NBL action, and then of course here on the panel next week.